Hi, Tom from bkmnutrition.com, and today I want to talk about protein for weight loss or fat loss, because I like to talk about fat loss, not weight loss. And there has been some talk, which I've seen people, it comes up again and again, that protein is a fat burning nutrient and eating more protein in your diet can help with fat burning. Now, this video is to put some clarity onto that, because protein is not a fat burning nutrient. However, there are elements of having a high protein diet which can be beneficial to you if you are trying to lose body fat. So I'm just going to run over those quickly in this video and give you some idea about how much protein you should be eating to maybe help your fat loss journey happen a bit better. So first of all, the benefits of a high protein diet. Satiety. Now, satiety is helping you keep fuller for longer. So one of the main problems people face when they are on a diet is not going hungry. And most of the time, people get undone by their diets because they start craving foods because they are hungry, because they're not eating enough food. So protein has a very good mechanism where it takes a long time to digest if you eat, say, solid protein. Whey protein shakes aren't that great at helping satiety, but so let's talk about solid protein. So if it's second, talk about like lean protein sources like chicken, lean beef, fish, vegan protein sources, sort of tofu, seitan, those sorts of things, that generally tend to fill you up for longer and keep you fuller for longer, so that you don't get so hungry so quick. So that's one of the benefits. The main benefits of including protein in your fat loss diet is that it keeps you fuller for longer. Protein burns more TEF. Now, if you watch other videos I've done, TEF is the thermic effect of food. Now, what this means is that whenever we ingest food, whenever we eat food, it doesn't just go boom, straight away, it dissolves and then it's magically in the body as calories. The body has to put energy in order to get the energy out. So it has to, say, stoke the fire with some coal or some wood in order to get the energy out. So you have to release the energy by putting energy in. Now, what the thermic effect of food is how many calories are burnt how many calories are burnt to, say, get 100 calories out. So if we say 100 calories of protein, you're generally going to burn about 30 calories to be able to get the 100 calories out. So you've got a net calorie score there of 70. With carbohydrates, depending on the source of the carbohydrates, you're talking between 80 and 90. And with fat, it's almost 99. So you get more of the calories out of fat than you do from, say, carbohydrates and proteins. So that's something to remember if you're doing a really high fat diet. Protein, of course, being the higher TEF, means that, say, if you're eating 300-400 calories from protein, you are not getting that 300-400 calories. So potentially you're eating less than what it is on paper. But what I just want to say here is that you're eating more protein does not burn more calories, because you've still got the 70, 80, whatever calories left over from the protein you've ingested. So you've still got to keep a calorie deficit, and certainly eating more protein is not going to magically drive down the calorie deficit, or magically drive up the calorie deficit, I should say. But it does mean that you burn more calories to digest the food. So it is one of those things that's advantageous, as well as keeping you fuller for longer. Protein is very unlikely to turn to body fat. Now, what we've got to be conscious of is when we're eating food, that although we've calculated a calorie deficit, it might not be a calorie deficit on paper for that day, because sometimes we're less active than we normally are. Sometimes we overeat by no mistake of our own, just we measure out the food wrong, or the food on the label, the calories on the label is wrong. So we potentially overeat. So we've always got to be wary that sometimes we might not be in a calorie deficit every day. So we can stack the deck in our favor of the nutrients that aren't likely to turn to fat in a surplus. So if you think about the thermic effects of food, if you've got a lot of fat in your diet, well, then potentially you're going to get 99% of those calories out. So if you've overeaten on fat for the day, it's highly likely that fat might end up as body fat, because you get so much of the energy out of it. Carbohydrate and fat can be turned quite easily to body fat. Carbohydrates are harder to turn to body fat, although this can happen through a number of processes. But it certainly is just as simple as carbohydrates goes into the fat cell, boom, you got more fat. The body prefers to actually try and burn excess carbohydrates off through neat, fidgeting, or walking around, stuff like that, or putting it into glycogen in the muscles. So it's only as a last resort that generally carbohydrates end up as fat. And then you've got protein, and protein, in order to turn to fat, has to first be something called deaminated, which is a bit of a where it breaks off the nitrogen from the cell structure, from the chemical structure, and then what you're left with is a base form of a carbohydrate, and then that would have to be then turned to fat. Now that is such a long process to do that. It's almost like going to the bank to take out £10 to then walk to the shop if you've already got £10 in your pocket. You just wouldn't do it. It's not logical to do that. So the body would not turn excess protein into fat. It's a long process. It takes a long period of time to do it, and it's also energy intensive. So the body would have to burn energy in order to make that process happen. So it's much more likely that excess protein will just generally be excreted out or burnt as carbohydrates, as NEAT or something like that. So and certainly when this has been studied, excess protein in the diet does not generally lead to more body fat. Now, there's some interesting studies which you may or may not want to read, where they went up to very, very high protein levels. So they kept the subjects at the same calorie levels and then ramped up the protein in one of the groups. And you would expect, because the protein was putting the calories higher, that group would gain weight, but they didn't. They actually improved their body composition. Now, what that means is they lost body fat and gained some muscle. So from that, and this has been done a few times, so it's almost the point where while we can see that protein doesn't turn to fat, it just gives you more muscle or better body composition. So from that we can determine that if you overeat on protein, it's highly unlikely you're going to end up fatter. So if you're controlling your fat intake and your carbohydrate intake quite strongly and making sure that you're not going over on that, but you overeat on protein, very unlikely that you're going to have a negative result from that. So that's just something to remember, is that if you are in a calorie deficit, if you're dieting and you really, really want to eat something, it's probably best to go for something like a chicken salad, or like a lean chicken salad, or a protein shake or something like that, because the excess protein is probably not going to end up as body fat. And also protein builds muscle, which is always a bonus. You know, you can never, well, I'm a bodybuilder, can never have too much muscle, but in terms of if you're a female, if you're an elderly person, even if you're a guy, you know, having more muscle is a beneficial thing. And sometimes people think about, having more muscle from a bodybuilder. It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen overnight like that. Having more muscle is a beneficial thing for any age, and you're not just going to put muscle on like kilos and kilos overnight. I wish it was that easy. It just doesn't happen. But having more muscle means you are generally a healthier person. So how much protein should you be eating? In terms of optimal for muscle building, 1.8 grams per kilo to 2.5 grams per kilo. So if you're a 100 kilo person, that would be 180 or 250 grams of protein. That's the optimal sort of window for muscle building and for maintaining and building muscle. Now, in terms of the studies that have been done, they've gone past that figure. The people didn't gain any more muscle, but they got better body composition. So if you can and your calories allow it, you probably want to go to the higher end, so 2.1, 2.3 grams per kilo of protein, rather than going down the lower end. Because again, we want to get that satiety amount. We want to get enough that's going to keep you full for longer. And also it's worth mentioning some of the potential risks of having a high protein diet, because I know that some people will watch this video and go, but you know, you have so much protein, your kidneys will get damaged and everything else. There is zero research to show that in healthy people, excess protein damages your kidneys. Now, the only studies where this has actually happened, as in more protein damaged people's kidneys or caused adverse kidney effects, were people who already had a chronic kidney disease. Now, they already got issues with their kidneys. They already have issues with processing protein, and that's why excess protein was damaging for them. In all the studies that have been done, healthy individuals with no chronic kidney disease, none of those people developed any sort of symptoms of kidney issues. So never worry about excuse me, you never worry about excess protein damaging your kidneys or your liver or anything else. No evidence to suggest that. However, there is some recent evidence and to point that if you have too much protein in a diet, potentially there's some adverse health risks just on I think it's epidemiological studies with all-cause mortality or something like that. But if you are increasing your fibre in your diet, so green veg, fruit, leafy vegetables, those sorts of things, actually that risk is offset quite nicely. I think it's something to do with the acidity of protein, but I'm not an expert on that, so I don't want to don't quote me on that. But certainly what I've read about is by adding more fibre to your diet, if you're having a high protein diet, generally tends to offset any of the potential long-term health risks that could be there. So, and that's always a good thing to have more green veg and more fruit and veg in your diet anyway. I incorporate a lot of leafy veg into my diet. I eat a lot of protein. I make sure I eat a lot of fibre to help digest the food and to push it through my colon without causing me issues. So that's the benefit of protein for weight loss or fat loss. I do recommend that if you are, especially if you're a woman, increasing your protein intake will definitely help with body composition. But always keep it between sort of 1.8 to 2.5 grams per kilo, because remember, you've still got to create a calorie deficit, and the rest of the diet, the rest of the calories is going to be made up with protein and fat, carbohydrates and fats. In terms of you're looking for an amount to aim for fats, 0.5 grams per kilo. So if you're a 100 kilo person, 50 grams of fats a day. And then generally the carbohydrates, I would shoot between what's left over from your calories. So if you're putting your protein up, then you've also got to take your carbohydrates down slightly. If you keep your fats low, you've got more to play with your carbohydrates in the middle. It's all a guessing game, what works for you, but you've always got to keep a calorie deficit. Just remember that. But having a higher protein means if you do go over your calorie deficit and it's from protein, it's unlikely you're going to gain body fat from that. So I hope this was helpful. Again, it's not a deep dive into performance nutrition. There is more people who can do those sorts of videos better than me. It's not my advanced area of expertise now, although it used to be. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe if you're not subscription, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.